Could you leave your porch light on tonight? Claire Bennett stood on my front step with rain in her hair and both arms folded across her chest. She had moved into the cream-colored Craftsman next door 3 days earlier. I looked past her toward her house. Her porch light was already burning. Is your power acting up? No. Her answer came too fast. Then she softened it with a small smile. Everything works. I just sleep better when I can see yours. The rain tapped against the porch roof. Claire glanced at the amber light above my door like she recognized it. I told her I would leave it on. She thanked me and crossed the wet strip of grass between our houses. A minute later, her curtains opened. She stood behind the glass until she saw my light was still shining. At the time, I thought my new neighbor was afraid of the dark. I had no idea she had seen that porch light 8 years before, or that it was the reason she had chosen the house next door. Before we go on, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have thought Claire was hiding. My name is Ethan Cole. I was 32, and I restored old houses around Ashford, Oregon. I lived alone in my grandfather's blue-gray Craftsman, where nearly everything had been repaired except the crooked back gate. Claire was 27 and worked from home as a children's book illustrator. I learned that from the moving boxes beside her window, labeled books, paints, and do not bend. That first night, I stayed on the couch longer than usual. The storm moved east around midnight, but I kept checking the window. Her porch light stayed on. So did mine. The next morning, I crossed the yard with my tool bag before I could talk myself out of it. Claire opened the door wearing an oversized gray sweater, jeans, and the guarded expression of someone who had expected a package, not a neighbor carrying a voltage tester. "You're here early," she said. "You asked me to leave a light on all night. And you did." "I did. But your light was working." Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the door. "I told you it was. I thought I'd check the wiring anyway." "Is this what you do when someone asks for a favor? Turn it into a home inspection?" "Only when the favor doesn't make sense." That earned the first real smile I had seen from her. "Come in then. But if you discover the house is haunted, I'm sending you the mortgage payment." The place still smelled like fresh paint and cardboard. Claire led me through a living room crowded with half-open boxes to the front entry. I checked the switch, the fixture, and the panel. Everything was fine. "You see?" she said from behind me. "No electrical emergency." I closed my tester. "Then why mine?" Her eyes moved toward the window facing my house. For a moment, the humor left her face. "That light is different." "Different how?" She looked at me again, as if measuring how much of the truth I had earned after 3 days and 1 storm. "Warmer," she said. It was not an answer, and we both knew it. I should have pushed. Instead, I crouched to examine the loose board on her front step. "This is going to catch somebody's heel." Claire folded her arms. "I bought a mysterious house with a dangerous porch. I'm off to an excellent start. I can fix it Saturday. I can pay you. It'll take 20 minutes. Then I can pay you for 20 minutes. You negotiate like an attorney. I negotiate like a woman who doesn't want her neighbor using free repairs as an excuse to become unbearable." I looked up at her. "Too late." She laughed, and something in the room changed. On Saturday morning, I brought over cedar screws, a drill, and coffee. Claire was already on the porch with 2 folding chairs and a measuring tape around her neck. "You planning to supervise?" I asked. "I'm planning to make sure you don't rebuild the entire porch and pretend it only took 20 minutes. She handed me one of the coffees. I took a sip and stopped. "No sugar. Splash of cream." She shrugged. "That's how you made it yesterday." "I didn't have coffee yesterday." Her expression froze for 1 heartbeat. Then I looked at the mug. It was an old blue enamel cup, chipped near the rim. "Where did you get this?" "I've had it for a while." I studied the chipped rim. "I used to own one like it. Mine had a chip there too. Maybe they made more than one." "That's possible." She said nothing, and somehow that made it feel less possible. Before I could ask again, she crouched beside the loose step. "Tell me what to hold." Claire asked why I chose cedar instead of pine, then put her fingers too close to the drill. "Move your hand." "I am helping." "You are helping me picture the emergency room." She pulled back. Bossy. We worked until the steps stopped moving. Then Claire held out $7. "You have exact change?" I asked. "I have a spreadsheet. Your kitchen is still in boxes, but you have a repair spreadsheet. Priorities." I took the money because refusing would not feel generous to her. It would feel like I had decided what she was allowed to owe. As I stood, I studied the chipped rim once more. "You're sure you've had this a while?" "I'm sure. Mine disappeared years ago." "Maybe you should keep better track of your things." She sounded amused, but something guarded passed through her eyes. Then she walked inside and returned with a sketch pad. "I drew your house this morning." The picture was quick, mostly charcoal and soft lines, but she had captured the slight tilt of the porch roof and the old maple leaning toward my chimney. "You made it look better than it is," I said. "That's my job." Her finger rested near the porch light in the drawing. The fixture was wrong. Not the one I had installed 6 years earlier, but the older brass lantern my grandfather had left behind. I pointed to it. "That hasn't been on the house in years." Claire shut the sketch pad. "I guessed," she said again. That night, I left the porch light on without being asked. A routine formed before either of us admitted it had. I came home from job sites around 6. Claire usually worked near her front window until dark, one knee tucked under her in the chair. Around 7, she would step onto her porch with tea. I would sit on mine with project plans or invoices. Claire began carrying her mug to my porch, and I brought dinner to hers when she forgot to eat during a deadline. She never asked about the light again, but she checked it every night. One evening, a gust of wind caught a stack of papers on her lap. I crossed the yard to help gather them before they blew into the street. They were illustrations for a children's book. A small fox moved through a forest from one pool of lamplight to another. In the final drawing, the fox stood outside a little house with a yellow window. "This is beautiful," I said. Claire held the pages against her chest. "It's unfinished. So is every house I've ever loved." She studied me. "You love houses?" "Old ones. They tell you what they've survived." "And people?" The question landed more heavily than her tone suggested. "I'm still learning how to read those." She sat on the step, leaving enough room beside her that I took the invitation. "My mother died 8 years ago," she said. The words were quiet but steady. "I'm sorry. She was sick for a while. I thought being prepared would make it easier." Claire looked out toward the street. It didn't. I waited. Years in restoration had taught me that silence was not always emptiness. Sometimes it was the space that kept something fragile from breaking. "Afterward," she continued, "I couldn't stand houses that were completely dark. Not because I thought anything was in them. It felt like everyone had gone." I glanced at my light. "So that's why?" "Part of why." "Part?" Her mouth curved faintly. "You ask a lot of questions for someone who answers very few. That sounds unfair. When was your last serious relationship?" I leaned back on my hands. "That is a hostile change of subject. Still a question." I looked through the maple branches toward my roofline. 3 years ago. We were engaged." Claire turned to me. "What happened?" "No betrayal. No dramatic scene. Rachel said I was good at showing up with tools and terrible at showing up without them." "What does that mean?" "It means if something broke, I fixed it. If she was upset, I solved the practical problem. But I didn't tell her when I was scared. I didn't ask her to stay when she started pulling away." I rubbed my thumb against the edge of the step. She said she never knew whether I loved her or just felt responsible for maintaining the life we built. Claire was quiet. "She wasn't entirely wrong," I said. "Do you still love her?" "No." "Do you still believe needing someone is the same as failing them?" I looked at her. "You always this direct?" "Only after sunset." The porch light reflected in her eyes. "No," I said. "But I'm still not good at it." Claire nodded like that answer mattered. Then she handed me the first 10 pages of her book. "I haven't shown these to anyone except my editor," she said. It was a small gesture. It felt larger than a confession. I read slowly. The fox in the story kept searching for the brightest house in the forest, convinced that safety was somewhere farther ahead. On the last page she had finished, the fox stopped beneath a lamp and realized the light had been following him all along. When I looked up, Claire was watching my face. "You don't have to say it's good. It's good. You build things. You're biased toward anything with a roof. I'm also biased toward foxes with poor decision-making skills." She laughed softly, and her shoulder touched mine. Neither of us moved away. Over the next week, I learned that Claire worked best before noon, hated phone calls, sharpened 3 pencils even though she used one, and baked when anxious. She learned that I was restoring the town library, drank coffee too late, and owned too many identical flannel shirts. "You own 6, she corrected one evening. "You counted? They hang where I can see them. Now who sounds suspicious?" She smiled. "Maybe I planned it." That line returned to me when rain began leaking through her office window. I arrived with caulk and a ladder. While Claire moved drawings away from the wall, a portfolio fell from a high shelf. Watercolors scattered across the floor. Claire knelt quickly. "I've got it." I crouched to help. Then I found my house. Not as it looked now. The old brass lantern hung beside the front door. My grandfather's truck sat in the driveway, though he had sold it 7 years earlier. Rain streaked the road, and across the street a dark car was parked beneath the maple tree. In the bottom corner, Claire had written a date. 8 years ago. My hands went still. Claire. She saw the page and closed her eyes. This wasn't a guess. No. You were here. Yes. I stood slowly, holding the painting by the edges. Why? She took it from me with care. I told you my mother died 8 years ago. At the hospital in Portland? In Salem. I was driving north afterward. I shouldn't have been driving at all. Her voice tightened. I made it as far as Ashford. I waited for the rest. She slid the painting back into the portfolio. That night was the worst night of my life, she said. Did something happen here? Her eyes lifted to mine. For a second I thought she would tell me everything. Instead, she shook her head. Not yet. But the fear in her face was not the fear of being caught in a lie. It was the fear of handing someone a truth that could change the way he looked at her. So I went back to the window. I sealed the leak. I did not ask again. 3 days later, Claire invited me to coffee at Bell's, the only cafe in Ashford that stayed open after 5. She was already seated in the corner when I arrived, a cream envelope beside her mug. You look like you're waiting for a diagnosis, I said. It's an offer. For the book? For a job. Her editor, Marissa Lane, had been promoted to lead a new children's imprint in Seattle. She wanted Claire to become the art director for its first year, while finishing her own book under contract. That sounds big, I said. It is. Do you want it? Claire traced a finger along the envelope. I wanted something like this for years. When would you go? I have 3 weeks to decide. The position starts in January. Move to Seattle? For at least part of the year. Part? They're open to a hybrid schedule after 6 months. That's good. It was the right thing to say. The slight fall in her expression told me she had heard the distance in it anyway. You don't have to sound happy, she said. I am happy for you. That's not what I said. Before I could answer, her phone rang. Marissa's name appeared on the screen. Claire stepped outside to take it. Through the window, I watched her pace beneath the awning. I was not trying to listen when she came back in. I only heard the last line because she stopped beside our table. No, she said into the phone. I haven't decided what I'd do with the house. She ended the call. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she sat down. Ask. Are you selling? I don't know. I nodded once. Claire frowned. That's it? What do you want me to say? The truth would be interesting. The truth was that the thought of her house empty made the entire street feel wrong. The truth was that I had started measuring my evenings by whether her porch door opened. Instead, I said, it's a good opportunity. Her face changed, not dramatically, just enough to show that I had disappointed her. Yes, she said, it is. On the drive home, I hated myself for answering like a man reading from an instruction manual. For the next 2 weeks, neither of us mentioned Seattle directly. We still met between the porches, but every conversation carried the deadline underneath it. By Friday morning, Claire had 5 days left to answer Marissa. Dan called while I unloaded lumber at the library. You taking the Mackenzie deck job this weekend? Probably. And your neighbor's porch before the storm? She can hire someone. Dan laughed. You've spent 2 weeks making sure she doesn't. She might move. Then talk to her. Rachel didn't leave because you cared too much. She left because you made every decision alone and called it protecting her. I told him to load the cedar. The storm was expected Saturday evening. Claire's porch roof had started pulling away at one corner, and if the wind caught it wrong, water would run straight into her front wall. I postponed the deck job and arrived at her house at 7 Saturday morning. She opened the door and stared at the ladder on my truck. You're supposed to be in Mackenzie. Dan talks too much. You'll lose the deposit. I moved it to Sunday. Why? Because your roof won't wait. Her expression hardened. Ethan, I didn't ask you to lose money. I know. I can hire someone, not before the storm. That doesn't make this your responsibility. The word stopped me. Responsibility. I set the tool bag down. Then don't treat it like charity. Pay for materials. Work with me. We'll call it a bad business decision between neighbors. Claire looked at the darkening sky, then at me. Fine, she said. But I'm not standing on the ground handing you nails while you play hero. You're not getting on the roof. I have excellent balance. You walked into your own porch column yesterday. It was early. We compromised. Claire worked from the ladder while I stayed on the roof. Rain began as we finished the flashing. Claire held the ladder steady while I climbed down. My boot slipped on the last rung, and she grabbed the back of my jacket. I've got you, she said. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. The yard disappeared. For 1 second, 8 years fell away, and I was standing under the old porch light while rain ran off the roof. A young woman sat inside a dark car across the street. Her face was pale behind the glass. I heard my own voice from years before. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." I turned toward Claire. She released my jacket slowly. "You said that before," I said. Her breathing changed. 8 years ago. The rain thickened around us. Claire looked toward her house. "We should get the tools inside." I caught her wrist lightly, then let go the instant she looked down at my hand. "Were you the woman in the car?" She did not answer. That was answer enough. We carried the tools inside as the storm broke over the street. Inside, rain hammered the repaired roof. "I remember pieces," I said. "A dark sedan. Someone crying. I brought coffee." "The blue cup," she said. "You knew." "Yes." "Since before you moved here?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to know who you were now. And because I didn't want gratitude to become the only thing between us. That's not what this is." Her eyes sharpened. "What is it?" The answer was close enough to frighten me. I had not yet said the word love, even to myself, but I knew the way my body recognized the sound of her door opening. I knew how empty my porch felt on nights she worked late. I knew I had given up money because the idea of rain coming through her wall mattered more than the job. "You're the most important part of my day," I said. Claire's expression softened, but she did not move closer. "That isn't the same as choosing me. I came here. You came because something was broken." The words struck harder because they were true. She stepped toward me, not close enough to touch. "Ethan, I care about you. More than I meant to. But I won't start something with a man who looks at me and sees a responsibility he failed to finish 8 years ago. I don't." "How do you know?" "You only remembered today." I opened my mouth. Nothing useful came out. Claire nodded, sadness moving through her face. "That's what I thought." She turned toward the desk, where the Seattle offer sat beneath a paperweight. "I have 4 days," she said. "I need to make a decision." I left because she had asked for a boundary, and for once I understood that respecting it did not mean disappearing. At least, I thought I understood. Sunday morning, I took the Mackenzie job early. I told myself I was giving Claire space. In reality, I was doing what I had always done, moving toward a problem with measurements and materials because wood was easier than wanting someone. For 2 days, I left before sunrise and returned after dark. The porch light stayed on. Claire's curtains stayed closed. On the 3rd evening, I heard her voice through the open kitchen window as I crossed my driveway. She was talking to Marissa. "I can pack the studio in a week," Claire said. "The house is the part I haven't figured out." I stopped. Marissa's reply was too faint to hear. Claire said, "Maybe selling is cleaner." Something inside me went cold. I went into my house without knocking on her door. An hour later, Claire crossed the yard. She stood at the bottom of my porch steps, arms folded against the cold. "You're avoiding me," she said. "I'm giving you room." "No. You're making a decision for both of us, and calling it kindness. I heard you talking about selling." Her jaw tightened. "You were listening. My window was open. And instead of asking me, you disappeared into work." "I didn't disappear. You left before dawn and came home after I closed the curtains. You said you needed to decide. I needed you to decide what you wanted." I looked toward her house. "I don't want to be the reason you turned down Seattle." "Did I ask you to be?" "No." "Then stop acting like my future is something you have to protect me from." I gripped the porch rail. Claire climbed 1 step. "You come closer when I need a roof fixed or a step repaired. But when I need you to say whether I matter, you retreat." "You matter." "How?" The question was direct. There was nowhere to hide. Still, I hesitated. Claire gave a small, pained laugh. "Exactly." She walked back across the yard. That night she did not ask me to leave the light on. At 10 her curtains closed. At 11 every window in her house went dark. My porch light burned over an empty yard, and for the first time I understood that a light left on from a distance could become another form of hiding. The storm arrived after midnight. Wind shook the maple branches against my roof. I woke to darkness and realized the porch light had gone out. I found a replacement bulb in my toolbox and stepped outside. Across the yard, Claire's living room lamp was on. Through the gap in her curtains, I saw cardboard boxes stacked beside the wall. I forgot the bulb in my hand. I crossed the grass in the rain and knocked. Claire opened the door wearing black leggings and an old college sweatshirt. Her hair was tied back. Behind her, 3 boxes were labeled studio. "You're packing. For Seattle. So you decided." "I decided to take the job." "And the house?" "I haven't." Claire looked past me. "Your light is out." "I know. You should fix it." "No." Her brow furrowed. I stepped inside only after she moved aside. The painting of my house lay on the coffee table. Beside it sat the blue enamel cup Claire had handed me that first Saturday. I picked it up and turned it over. My initials were scratched faintly into the base. "This is mine?" Claire nodded. "You gave it to me." A memory opened fully. Rain, a dark car, a young woman gripping the steering wheel with both hands. I had returned from a late repair call and seen her parked across the street. At first I thought she was lost. When I approached, she cracked the window and told me she was fine, though she clearly was not. I brought coffee. I sat on the curb a few feet from her car because she did not want me close. I asked whether she had someone to call. She said her mother was dead. I did not know what to say, so I told her she did not have to drive until she was ready. I left the porch light on and waited inside where she could see me through the window. When her car finally pulled away near dawn, the cup was gone. "I remembered the night," I said. "I didn't remember your face." "I know. Did you move here because of me?" Claire drew a slow breath. "Not only because of you." I waited. After my mother died, I moved 3 times in 5 years. Every place felt temporary. Last spring, I decided I wanted a town small enough to know, a house I could afford, and room to finish my book. My aunt sent me listings around Ashford. She touched the edge of the painting. I recognized your house in one of the photos. The cream house next door was for sale. When I came to see it, you were outside repairing your railing. You saw me. Yes. Why didn't you come over? Because you didn't owe me a reunion. Her eyes held mine. And because the man I remembered belonged to a single night. I didn't know who you had become. Not really. Then why buy the house? It fit my budget. It had the right room for a studio. It was close enough to Portland for my work. She paused. But your porch light was the reason I chose this house instead of the other places. When I stood there and saw it, I felt safe. I lowered my eyes to the cup. That night, she continued, you didn't rescue me. You didn't even know my name. You just stayed visible until I could move again. The room seemed very quiet beneath the storm. I didn't move here expecting you to remember me, Claire said. I moved here because this was the first place that ever felt like I could begin again. I looked at the boxes. And now? Now Seattle is a real opportunity. I'm taking it. But that doesn't automatically mean selling. Marissa asked whether I'd bring the studio furniture for the first 6 months. That's what I was packing. I closed my eyes briefly. I heard half a conversation and built the rest myself. Yes, I'm sorry. I know. She made it honest. Then she asked the question I had been avoiding from the beginning. What do you want, Ethan, when I'm not asking you to save me? I looked at her. Not the woman in the car. Not the grieving girl from 8 years ago. Claire, who made repair spreadsheets, sharpened 3 pencils, challenged every free favor, and had somehow turned 2 porches into the center of my life. I want you, I said. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. I wanted you before I remembered, I continued. I wanted you when you argued over $7, when you showed me your book, when you counted my flannel shirts. I kept calling it concern, because concern was safer. Claire's mouth trembled into the smallest smile. I love you, I said, and I'm terrified that saying it now will sound like I'm asking you to choose me instead of your work. Are you? No. I stepped closer. Take the job. Go to Seattle. Build the career you wanted. Keep this house or rent it or change every room. I don't want a smaller version of your life so I can feel secure. What are you asking for? A chance to be part of it. The storm rattled the windows. Behind me, my porch remained dark. I looked through her front window toward my house, then back at Claire. Wait here. I ran across the yard. She followed as far as her porch, calling my name, but I kept going. I screwed the replacement bulb into the fixture, and the amber light came back across the wet boards. Then I reached inside, flipped the switch, and let my porch go dark by choice. Only then did I cross back through the rain. Claire stood beneath her own porch light, watching me. I stopped in front of her. You don't have to watch my light from across the yard anymore, I said. If you'll let me, I want to be here with you. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She laughed once and wiped them away. You know I'm still going to Seattle. I know. For months. I know. And I'm keeping my own house. I was hoping you would. She searched my face. No repairs unless I approve them. That condition is unreasonable. Ethan, I agree. Her hands came to rest against my chest. I didn't move next door because I thought you were my future, she said. I moved here because you once helped me survive a night I didn't think I could get through. And now I'm choosing you because I know who you are. It was not gratitude, dependence, or a memory mistaken for love. It was a choice. I touched her cheek, giving her time to step back. She didn't. When I kissed her, it was gentle at first, almost cautious. Then Claire gripped the front of my wet jacket and pulled me closer, and every careful distance we had kept between us disappeared. Afterward, we sat beneath her porch light while the storm moved east. My house across the yard was dark. For once, I did not feel the need to fix it. 1 year later, a stone path connected our porches. Claire kept her house and spent 10 days each month in Seattle. I learned that missing someone was not the same as losing them, and that asking when she would be home did not make me weak. Her book was published in the spring. On the final page, the little fox stood between two houses, joined by a path of pale stones. One porch light glowed at the end of the trail. Claire dedicated the book to her mother. Under that, in smaller letters, she wrote, "For the man who left a light on," and then crossed the yard. Whenever Claire traveled, I still turned on my porch light before sunset. Not because she needed help surviving the night. Not because I was afraid she would forget the way home. I left it on because love, I had finally learned, was not about waiting at a safe distance. It was about making yourself visible. Speaking before silence made the choice for you, and being there when the person you loved came back. So tell me in the comments, would you have revealed the truth sooner, or waited until you knew the connection was real? Subscribe for more slow burn love stories about the choices that finally bring two people home.